This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook, and I have one of my idols, a guy that I've looked up to as not only a JD MBA from Harvard, which always makes me jealous, but also, of course, the CEO and founder of Take-Two Interactive Software, the founder and managing partner of ZMC. He also is an incredible author and one of the leaders of the program, of course. Strauss Zelnick, welcome to the Playbook.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this because I have been trying in my life, my mission is to empower over 1 billion people to be happy. And part of the context of that is this idea of you have to be consistent and persistent, and not only be consistent and persistent, but enjoy it. Find the light, the love, and the lessons. And as I look through your illustrious career so far, it reeks of just being consistent and persistent. Obviously, you have to have some quantum talent and DNA in there, but you're living proof when you look down a resume that's so filled with great successes and lessons, but there's a lot of activity that people just don't understand the exponentiality of being consistent. You've written books, you speak about it, you prove it by living it. What are some of the tricks of, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial discipline that you've been able to execute on for all these years?
Well, I think the trick, I always get nervous when people who seem successful explain their list of habits or methods, because the underlying subtext is, I'm incredibly awesome. If you just do this impossible list of impossible things every day, starting at 4 a.m, maybe you can aspire to be as awesome as I am, but probably not. You'll probably fail. And so, what I found is that success comes in all different ways, all different styles for all different people. And the attribute that's most closely correlated with having the life you want is knowing what kind of life you want. And taking the time to think about early and often what your goals are, what your values are, and how you can align those in pursuit of your own vision of success. In my opinion, is the most effective way to have that success. No one else really wants my life. I mean, I love my life. It's very close, if not almost exactly what I set out for. And I really mean more personally than professionally, but I'll include professionally as well. But it's tailored to my values and my goals, not yours or anyone else's. So I have a bunch of habits, I think some very effective, some less so, but my habits are relevant to you, for example. Everyone has their own style. Different styles work. The only thing that people have in common who are successful is knowing what they want.
Yeah, the what is
and owning that. And then, to your point, of course, you have to work for it.
And do you see the exponential results, regardless of what the habits or disciplines or procedures that people take, the difference between someone that does them consistently compared to people that may, I always say two minutes a day is worth more than 2 hours on a Saturday. And it's because of my belief of the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious continuum working together. Do you see exponential results from doing something every single day and staying focused in on it?
Unquestionably. I mean, writers, for example, good writers write every day. They don't write 12 hours a day, they write 4 hours a day, but good writers write every day. I get exercise 6 or 7 days a week. And some days are better than others, but I love it. And one of the reasons I love it is that I do it 6 or 7 days a week. I don't know about you, but if I find myself taking a few days off, maybe because I was sick or something interfered, getting back into the gym on that 3rd or 4th day is incredibly hard psychologically, even though I know I will feel better afterwards and I really like it. And also, our actions today just don't set us up for tomorrow. If you floss your teeth today, guess what? You still have to floss them tomorrow. No one complains about that. So why should we complain about working, the next day, working hard the next day, or doing something hard, or taking on an interpersonal challenge? That's part of life. So I've never had massive, great things just fall in my lap. I'm very much a person who puts one foot in front of the other, and sometimes it can feel like a very, very long walk before anything good happens. But I've never been someone who made a choice or a decision or worked, crammed for a test or stayed up all night and then had something great or good happen. I've just never operated that way.
Yeah. One of the challenges I had when I was a young entrepreneur, we both had varied backgrounds that are similar in state of education and then success at a young age. My ego was a really big challenge for me. And the older I get, the less I know. And I would say the only thing I know more about is my own ego. And that helps me more than anything. There are a lot of younger entrepreneurs that get great success up front. And even without the great success, I see the same ego in a lot of young entrepreneurs that I had about knowing what I don't know and, projecting my insecurities. Was that, number one, a challenge for you? As you know, obviously you graduated from a great school and had some really prestigious positions at a young age. Did you have to go through a learning process for your own ego when you were young, or is it just a humility that was created by your parents that you grew up with?
Well, I think you captured it. Ego is just the other side of the coin of insecurity. Arrogance is the other side of the coin of insecurity. When you run into someone who's unpleasant or arrogant, full of him or herself, and highly egotistical, inevitably, I'm sure there are exceptions, but inevitably that person feels bad inside or empty inside or disappointed inside. And so when I was starting out in my career, I was like supercharged by anxiety and insecurity. So I guess it wasn't, a surprise that I often came across, I don't think I do anymore, but I know that I did. And I imagine I sometimes still can, but I came across as cold and aloof and arrogant and at times egotistical. And look, everyone has an ego. And if you're an entrepreneur or you lead a bunch of people, I think to say that you're not going to have an ego is just unrealistic. But arrogance is not required, unpleasantness is not required, being cold is not required. And I found that as I grew more secure with myself and who I was and am, including my flaws, I was much more effective as a leader, much more compelling as a person, much more connected as a husband and father. And it's been a long road, and I don't mean to imply that I'm, I've sort of reached the, reached the end of it. I certainly hope I haven't. But people who address the world from a place of humility are usually people who feel reasonably comfortable in their own skin. And I did not start off that way, and I had to do a lot of work to get there. And when I run into someone who's cold or aloof or difficult or all about themselves, that could be like something that pushed my buttons. And what I find now is I interact with them from a place of empathy. But in fairness, I try to interact with everyone from a place of empathy to the best of my ability. And I find that if I'm not coming from a place of empathy, then there's something wrong with me in that situation. There's something I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, empathy is so important as we get older as well as leaders. I wrote the book with Blaine Bartlett on compassionate capitalism. You are a classic example of a servant leader, a merchant servant that is providing value and service for others with great intent. But once again, it's easier to talk and to teach about these things as we get older. And, I have 3 daughters that are, 21, 18, and 16, and I try to manage their expectations about giving and receiving by knowing our values. That I think we lose the time frame of life by projecting, hey, you should be this benevolent, great leader at 21, when I'm more concerned about you figuring out the what of your values and starting the practice of taking inventory of your values, surrounding yourself with the people and the ideas that were aligned with your values. And if you're receiving far more than you're giving, the day will come where that can shift. But I'm a big fan of helping the younger people understand the timing of, empathy and forgiveness and gratitude and giving. We can all give of ourselves, but I've made this quantum shift on receiving. I want to teach young people, look, I want you to learn to receive as much as you can so you can give it all away. Mm-hmm. And can you share your perspective on kind of the evolution of that, entrepreneur receiving and giving relationship, and how you perceive or can teach or enlighten people on being a merchant servant or a servant leader?
Well, there's so much in there that you raise. Adam Grant wrote a great book called Give and Take, and his position is that there are three kinds of people, matchers, givers, and takers. Matchers who are always trying to say, if you give to me, I'll give to you. To me, that's like the worst way to live. It's exhausting.
I live there,
and annoying. we know what takers look like, and then we think we know what givers look like. And his position that ultimately takers can do well economically, but they have pretty terrible lives. Matchers can do fine, but they don't optimize for either what they give or what they get. And givers tend to be the most successful and the most happy of the crew, as long as they don't give, as long as they don't become doormats. As long as giving doesn't mean, sure, you can do whatever you want with me and I will still be okay. And I started as a taker, and I hope and believe I grew into a giver. I didn't take this and go to matcher along the way. And but I definitely started out by, this was all the world was for me, and I didn't start with anything, and I had to go grab it. And I worked so hard, and I guess, I had some skills that it kind of worked, but the collateral damage, both personally and on others, was significant. And it was only when I really understood that leadership is about seeing things through the eyes of other people and sincerely taking an interest in what other people need and want, that I began to be more effective and, frankly, more successful. When I speak at business schools, I'll often ask the question, what's the job of a successful company? And the answer, well, at least someone will answer, well, to make money. And the answer is, of course, that's not right, unless you're in the business of printing currency. Your job is to serve your consumers by making goods and services that you can deliver at a cost that's lower than the value you're offering. And if you don't do that, then you will fail, personally, professionally, individually, corporately. Equally, when I talk to people starting out in their careers, I'll talk to people before a job interview and role playing, and I'll say, why do you want this job? And often the answer will be, well, I want to work in a great culture with great people who mentor me so I can learn more. And I'm like, no, start over again. You're not in university anymore. That's what you got to do in university when you were paying. But now you're getting paid. So your job is to add value to the organization in excess of what you get paid. And so your answer has to be, I think what you do is extraordinary and passionate about your mission, and I'd like to create value as part of your mission. And if that isn't your answer, that's a problem. And if you go to a company where you extract more value, if you take more than you give, one of two things is going to happen. Your job is not stable, or the company you work at isn't stable. Because a company that gives out more than it gets from an economic system fails. And if you go to a company and you give more than you get, you will probably succeed. And if the company gives more than it gets, it will probably succeed. All of our companies that we own and control are first focused on consumers. That's our primary constituency. We're not focused first on our shareholders. They're part of, we say that we have four constituents. Our consumers, if we don't please them, delight them, and deliver to them, we have no reason to exist. Second, our colleagues. If we don't take care of them and treat them well and create a great culture and compensate them fairly, how can they serve our customers? Third is our shareholders, because they give us the capital to do these deals and they deserve a return on that. And fourth and finally, ourselves. We eat last. Is that humility? No, actually. It's just economics. It's sheer economics. And if you look at it, I was shocked and appalled that there was a whole bunch of press maybe 6 months ago, before COVID and before these terrible, tragic riots and killings and all this horrible stuff that's going on. Sort of, maybe it was a simpler time in retrospect. And a bunch of corporations are like, we think maybe being socially aware is part of our mission. It's not just about making the last nickel of profit. I was like, welcome to the real world. When did you finally came up with that notion? If you're not serving people, you have no reason to be in business, and you certainly have no reason to make a profit.
Absolutely. One last issue too. We both work in the media side of stuff. I was one of the founding investors in Overactive Media on the esports side. Obviously, you have some of the greatest content that is out there. and, you know, looking also that we both are fitness oriented, putting our health, mind, body, soul health first before anything else. I'm having a difficult time reconciling with some of the younger people the amount of screen time versus exercise, fitness, etc. I'd love for you, as, you know, the leader of one of the best media companies and content people, who is probably, not to, you know, kiss up to you, but I saw you without your shirt on, man. You're one of the fittest 62-year-olds I've ever seen. I did get your age right, forgive me, but I mean,
I'm 62.
This guy has to sit in front of screens as much as anyway. You know, where and how can we reconcile an obvious trend of screen time for our children, right? You have 3, I have 4, and make sure that we're putting the necessary impetus on the body, the mind, and the soul, that there has to be a balance, because, you know, both, I tell my kids all the time, both are addicting, right? You just explained it when you're talking about, if I don't work out for a few days for whatever reason, it's seriously addicting. Like, you got to go play, you know, a game, you know, NBA 2K right away. How can we reconcile those two?
Well, it's a great question. You know, the world is definitely heading more towards screens, and this time of work from home, what we're doing right now is a great example of that. And some of that's a wonderful benefit, because working from home is not my idea of fun necessarily. On the other hand, you know, it's vastly more productive. There's no commutes, there's no breakfasts and lunches, there's no wasted time running between meetings. So I have an amazingly productive day in a much shorter time envelope than previously. It's also a more exhausting day, frankly. There are no breaks, and I find it exhausting to sit in one place. But as a result, I have more time for fitness, even more time. I have more time with my family, more time with my wife. So the electronic revolution that's ongoing, and frankly, in my opinion, in its infancy, largely I think has been incredibly good, including screen time. So I'm the wrong person to sort of say, I think it's terrible and we shouldn't do it. I do think that technological advances can and have and will continue to improve life. But everything in moderation. And when I'm exercising, you know, I'm not also on my device. I don't bring a device to the gym. When I'm eating with my family, I don't bring a device to the table. I don't believe in doing that. I separate from my electronic connections regularly during the course of a day. I think preaching to our children, hey, you know, electronic devices are the devil and you shouldn't do it, even if I believed it, which I don't, it wouldn't help. I think saying, make sure to take time for other things that are important in life. Go take a walk, connect with other people, move your body, have a spiritual life, and all of those things you should do without technology. I think that's credible and reasonable.
That's awesome. Last question real quick. My best philosophy, strategy, teaching tool to empower all these people to be happy is one practice. And I think you're someone who fits the mold, and I would love to hear your lesson or advice to, if someone said to you, hey, you know, Strauss, how do I practice ending fear? You know, what would be your strategy of practicing ending fear?
What a great question. And there are so many different kinds of fear. I mean, if it's fear about something rational, maybe it's not right to end it. Like, if someone's trying to kill you, it's a good idea to be afraid and then, you know, get out of the way. I think you're referring to fear that maybe is less rational or is more free-floating. And the first thing is be willing to feel it, even if it's uncomfortable. We hate uncomfortable feelings as humans, so we push those away. And I think pushing away uncomfortable feelings is like, it's like if you're in the ocean and you see a huge wave bearing down on you, if you stand up and face the wave head on, you're going to get hurt. But if you dive into it, or you turn around and swim with it, and sure, you're probably going to be okay. I feel the same way about negative feelings. They're there for a reason. They're not going to kill you. Feel them, take them in, ask yourself what's underlying them, what is that about? The second thing is that the fear is about something rational or semi-rational. It's always wise to just play it out, you know, or write it down. Like, what's the worst that could happen? What does that look like? What do I do then? What happens then? What do I do then? What happens then? What do I do then? And the third is to take appropriate actions. So you've you felt it, you thought about it, you act on it. And then having done all of that, you just have to turn to whatever faith or spiritual practice you have and turn it over to that, recognizing that we cannot control outcomes. We can, I hope, take responsibility for what we want. I believe that we can make plans. I trust that we can take action. Having done all that, we simply have to get out of the way of the outcome. And we have to recognize that not everything will go our way, and we still have to find a way to be okay. And so my belief is, having done all that, you have to be comfortable with the notion that not everything will be okay, but I can still be okay. And, you know, life throws a lot of curves at us, not all of them good. And if we're going to be beholden to we feel good when things are great and we feel bad when things are bad, it's going to be a pretty rotten life. We have to find a way to feel connected and sound, even when things aren't great. And the way you do that, in my view, is, and I sort of alluded to it, but to put a fine point on it, is in addition to taking appropriate action, in addition to understanding what you can and cannot control, having a spiritual connection both with yourself and with others, that reminds you that the world and everything in and around it is way bigger than you are. Oh, and finally, that this too shall pass. You know, humans are wired to believe that whatever's going now is going to continue. You know, all the press about COVID-19, whatever's going now is going to continue. Well, it isn't. Pandemics come to an end one way or another. You know, the massive amount of money that's been spent on the pandemic, I understand trying to save lives. It's absolutely the right thing to do to save lives, but trillions of dollars for a flu virus that by definition will not be around in a couple of years because it will have mutated. Meanwhile, what are we doing about heart disease? What are we doing about cancer? What are we doing about education? What are we doing about poverty? And what are we doing about infrastructure? It's humans' nature, and this is not political, to respond emotionally to panic. But the smarter thing to do would be to put things in perspective and recognize everything comes and goes, and shouldn't we devote our resources to making long-term beneficial changes?
Absolutely. And I certainly appreciate your time with helping me with my mission of empowering so many people to be happy. That's an unbelievable blend of pragmatic currency with the spiritual currency of faith, and how we can utilize that holistic approach to a happy and healthy life. And you are the epitome of happy and healthy, I can tell, as well as extremely successful. Thank you so much for your wisdom. I appreciate Strauss Zelnick here with David Meltzer on Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.